In the serene suburb of Millbrook, just outside the bustling city of Hartford, Connecticut, a heinous crime shattered the illusion of peaceful suburban life. On a crisp autumn morning in September 2018, the body of 17-year-old Emily Chen was found in the woods behind her family's home. The gruesome discovery sent shockwaves through the community, leaving residents locked behind their doors and whispering about the killer among them. Detective James Johnson, a seasoned investigator with the Hartford Police Department, was called to lead the case. With sharp intuition and unwavering dedication, Johnson delved into the intricate web of lies and deceit surrounding Emily's murder. Little did he know, this case would challenge his perceptions and force him to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. As the investigation unfolded, suspicion initially fell on Emily's stepmother, Laura Chen. The troubled relationship between the two was no secret to their neighbors, and Laura's apparent jealousy of her stepdaughter seemed to provide a motive. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly straightforward case lay a twisted tale of betrayal, secrets, and fatal consequences. At the center of this tragedy stood David Chen, Emily's stepfather, a respected businessman and pillar of the community. David appeared to be the grieving father figure, supporting his wife through their shared loss. But as Detective Johnson soon discovered, David's carefully constructed facade concealed a web of lies that would ultimately lead to his downfall. This is the story of a murder that tore apart a family, challenged a detective's instincts, and revealed the devastating consequences of unchecked desire and betrayal. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are hiding in plain sight, wearing the mask of normalcy in our very own neighborhoods. Emily Chen was a vibrant and promising young woman whose life was cut tragically short just weeks before her 18th birthday. Born to single mother Laura Thompson in 2001, Emily grew up as a bright and curious child, always eager to learn and explore the world around her. From an early age, Emily showed a passion for art and literature. Her teachers often praised her creativity and insightful essays, marking her as a student with great potential. Emily's artwork adorned the walls of her high school, and she had recently begun to explore photography, capturing the beauty of nature in the woods behind her home, the same woods that would ultimately become the site of her untimely death. Despite her academic and artistic achievements, Emily's home life was far from perfect. When she was 12, her mother married David Chen, a successful local businessman. While Emily initially welcomed the stability David brought to their lives, the relationship between stepdaughter and stepfather grew increasingly strained as Emily entered her teenage years. Friends and classmates described Emily as kind-hearted, but fiercely independent. She had a small, tight-knit group of friends and was known for standing up against bullying in school. Her best friend, Sarah Thompson, recalled Emily's dream of studying journalism at NYU, aspiring to become an investigative reporter and uncover truths hidden beneath the surface. Emily's relationship with her mother Laura had always been complex. As an only child, Emily had been the center of Laura's world for years. However, the arrival of David in their lives created a shift in dynamics. Emily often felt that her mother prioritized her new marriage over their mother-daughter bond, leading to frequent arguments and emotional distance. In the months leading up to her death, those close to Emily noticed a change in her demeanor. She became more withdrawn, spending increased time alone in her room or wandering in the woods with her camera. Her art took on darker themes, and her usually meticulous schoolwork began to slip. Sarah remembered Emily seeming distracted and worried, but when pressed, Emily would brush off concerns with a forced smile and a change of subject. What no one knew at the time was that Emily had stumbled upon a secret that would prove fatal. In her quest for truth and natural curiosity, she had uncovered something that someone was willing to kill to keep hidden. Emily Chen's young life, full of promise and potential, was snuffed out just as she stood on the threshold of adulthood, leaving behind a community in mourning and a mystery that would shake Millbrook to its core. David Chen, age 45 at the time of Emily's murder, presented himself as the epitome of suburban success. A charismatic and well-respected financial advisor, David had built a thriving practice in Hartford, managing the wealth of some of the city's most affluent residents. His polished appearance and confident demeanor made him a natural leader in the community, serving on the local Chamber of Commerce and coaching youth soccer. Born and raised in a working-class family in Boston, David had clawed his way up the social ladder through a combination of charm, intelligence, and ruthless ambition. He met Laura Thompson at a charity gala in 2012, and their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage just 8 months later. To the outside world, David appeared to be the perfect husband and stepfather, providing stability and financial security to Laura and Emily. However, beneath the veneer of success and respectability, David harbored dark secrets and unfulfilled desires. His marriage to Laura had quickly lost its luster, and he found himself drawn to the excitement of an illicit affair. For the past year, David had been involved in a passionate relationship with Maria Gonzalez, the wife of his next-door neighbor and close friend Carlos. David's affair with Maria was more than just a physical attraction. He felt truly alive in her presence, experiencing a connection he believed he had never shared with Laura. The two lovers would meet in secret, stealing moments of passion while their spouses were at work or running errands. David became an expert at lying and manipulating those around him to maintain his double life. As Emily entered her late teens, David found himself increasingly uncomfortable in her presence. Her perceptive nature and keen eye for detail made him paranoid that she might uncover his infidelity. He began to avoid spending time alone with his stepdaughter, making excuses to miss family dinners and events. Friends and colleagues described David as charming and generous, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. Carlos Gonzalez, unaware of David's betrayal, often praised him as the best neighbor and friend a man could ask for. David's clients trusted him implicitly, drawn in by his confident assurances and impressive track record. Yet those who knew David best sensed an underlying current of discontent. His assistant at the financial firm noted his increased irritability and distraction in the months leading up to Emily's death. David's longtime friend from college, Mark Stevens, observed that David seemed to be living on edge, as if constantly looking over his shoulder. Little did anyone suspect that behind David Chen's carefully crafted image lay a man capable of unspeakable acts, driven by desperation to protect his secrets and preserve his way of life at any cost. The grisly discovery was made on the morning of September 15, 2018, by a jogger on his usual trail through the woods behind the Chen residence. The body of Emily Chen lay partially concealed beneath a pile of leaves and branches, a crude attempt at concealment that did little to hide the horrific nature of the crime. Detective James Johnson arrived on the scene within the hour, his experienced eye taking in every detail. Emily's body showed signs of a violent struggle. Bruises marred her arms and face, and defensive wounds on her hands indicated she had fought desperately for her life. The cause of death was immediately apparent, a jagged wound across her throat, likely inflicted with a serrated blade. As the forensics team combed the area for evidence, Johnson noted several key details. Emily's camera, which friends claimed she always carried on her woodland excursions, was missing. Drag marks and disturbed vegetation suggested the body had been moved from the initial site of the attack, possibly in an attempt to hide it from immediate discovery. Perhaps most tellingly, there were no signs of sexual assault, leading Johnson to suspect that the motive for the murder was personal rather than opportunistic. The brutality of the attack pointed to a crime of passion, someone who knew Emily and had been driven to a moment of uncontrollable rage. As news of the murder spread, the once peaceful community of Millbrook descended into a state of fear and suspicion. Neighbors who had previously left their doors unlocked now double-checked their security systems. Parents kept their children indoors, and the woods that had once been a place of recreation became a no-go zone, cordoned off with yellow police tape. Detective James Johnson, a 20-year veteran of the Hartford Police Department, took charge of the investigation with grim determination. Known for his meticulous approach and uncanny ability to see connections others missed, Johnson had solved some of the department's most challenging cases. As he stood in the Chen's living room, surveying the family photos on the mantel. He knew this case would test him like never before. The first 48 hours of the investigation were a whirlwind of activity. Johnson and his team conducted initial interviews with family members, friends, and neighbors. Emily's school records were examined, her social media accounts scrutinized, and her movements in the days leading up to her death were painstakingly reconstructed. David Chen, appearing shell-shocked, provided a detailed account of his whereabouts on the night of the murder. He claimed to have been working late at his office, a fact corroborated by security footage and his assistant's testimony. Laura Chen, still visibly distraught, struggled to maintain composure during her interview. She admitted to having argued with Emily the afternoon before her disappearance, but insisted it was just typical mother-daughter friction. As Johnson delved deeper, a picture began to emerge of a household fraught with tension. Neighbors spoke of frequent arguments between Emily and her mother, their raised voices often carrying across manicured lawns. Emily's best friend, Sarah Thompson, revealed that Emily had been increasingly unhappy at home, feeling trapped and misunderstood. The forensics team's initial findings provided more questions than answers. Trace evidence found on Emily's clothing didn't match samples taken from David or Laura. The murder weapon, likely a hunting knife or similar serrated blade, was nowhere to be found despite an extensive search of the Chen property and surrounding areas. A breakthrough came when Johnson interviewed Maria Gonzalez, the Chen's next-door neighbor. Maria, visibly nervous during the interview, mentioned that she had seen Emily arguing with Laura in the driveway the day before her disappearance. More intriguingly, Maria let slip that Laura had always seemed jealous of her daughter's youth and beauty. This information, combined with the tumultuous home environment and Laura's shaky alibi for the night of the murder, led Johnson to focus his attention on Emily's mother. He theorized that years of resentment had finally boiled over, resulting in a confrontation that turned deadly. As the investigation entered its second week, Detective Johnson felt confident they were on the right track. He obtained a warrant to search Laura's personal belongings and communications, hoping to find the crucial piece of evidence that would break the case wide open. However, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of Johnson's mind. Something about David Chen's calm demeanor and perfect alibi struck him as too neat, too convenient. Little did Johnson know, his instincts were leading him toward a truth far more sinister than he could have imagined. As the investigation progressed, all signs seemed to point toward Laura Chen as the prime suspect in her stepdaughter's murder. Detective Johnson, driven by the evidence at hand, began to build a case against the 42-year-old homemaker with a troubled past. Johnson's team uncovered a series of heated text exchanges between Laura and Emily in the weeks leading up to the murder. In one particularly vicious argument, Laura accused Emily of trying to sabotage her marriage, while Emily fired back, calling her stepmother a pathetic, jealous old woman. These digital breadcrumbs seemed to support the theory of a family dynamic that had reached a breaking point. Further fueling suspicion was Laura's behavior in the aftermath of Emily's death. While initially distraught, she quickly became defensive and evasive during questioning. Her alibi for the night of the murder was weak. She claimed to have been home alone watching television, with no one to corroborate her story. A search of the Chen home uncovered a journal hidden in Laura's bedside table. Entries detailed her growing resentment towards Emily, lamenting the girl's beauty and the attention she received from David. One disturbing passage read, "Sometimes I wish she would just disappear. Our lives would be so much better without her constant presence, her judging eyes." The case against Laura seemed to strengthen when a neighbor reported seeing her return home in the early hours of the morning on the day Emily's body was discovered. Despite this mounting evidence, Johnson couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. David Chen's calm and collected demeanor, coupled with his airtight alibi, continued to bother him. As Johnson reviewed the case files late one night, a new angle began to emerge: the missing camera. Emily's passion for photography and her habit of carrying her camera everywhere suggested that it could hold crucial evidence. If she had indeed stumbled upon something worth killing for, it might have been captured on that camera. Determined to find it, Johnson expanded the search area and brought in additional resources. Days later, a breakthrough occurred. A park ranger found Emily's camera submerged in a shallow creek not far from the initial crime scene. Forensics experts were able to recover the memory card, which contained several photographs taken on the day of her death. The images started off as typical nature shots, but as Johnson and his team scrolled through them, they found a series of photos that made their blood run cold. The last few pictures captured an altercation between Emily and an unidentified man. The man's face was partially obscured, but his distinctive watch and ring were clearly visible. Johnson recognized the jewelry immediately. It belonged to David Chen. Confronted with this damning evidence, David's facade began to crumble. He confessed to the affair with Maria Gonzalez and admitted that Emily had discovered their secret. Fearing she would expose him and ruin his reputation, David had lured Emily into the woods under the pretense of wanting to talk, only to brutally murder her in a fit of rage when she threatened to go public with what she knew. With David Chen's confession, the case came to a close, but the impact of Emily's murder continued to haunt the Millbrook community. The story of a seemingly perfect suburban family torn apart by betrayal and violence served as a stark reminder that darkness often lurks beneath the surface of everyday life. Detective James Johnson, though hardened by years on the force, was deeply affected by the case, carrying the memory of Emily Chen with him as a testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked desire and hidden secrets. When Emily's body was discovered, Laura had no explanation for her late-night excursion, claiming she must have been sleepwalking, a condition she had never mentioned before. As circumstantial evidence mounted, Johnson felt increasing pressure from his superiors and the media to make an arrest. The community, gripped by fear, demanded justice for Emily. Laura Chen, once a sympathetic figure, became the target of public hatred and suspicion. Johnson, despite his growing certainty of Laura's guilt, couldn't shake a lingering doubt. Something about her desperation and fear during interrogations didn't align with the calculated killer he believed had committed this crime. Nevertheless, with the evidence at hand, he prepared to make an arrest. On a rainy Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Emily's body was found, Laura Chen was taken into custody. As she was led from her home in handcuffs, she protested her innocence, her cries echoing through the stunned neighborhood. David Chen watched from the doorway, his face an unreadable mask as his wife was placed in the back of a police cruiser. Little did Johnson know that in his pursuit of justice, he had fallen for a brilliantly orchestrated misdirection, leaving the true killer free to cover his tracks. The case against Laura Chen seemed airtight, but Detective James Johnson couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It was a small detail, easily overlooked, that finally set him on the path to the truth. While reviewing security footage from businesses near the Chen home, Johnson noticed David's car leaving his office parking lot much earlier than he had claimed on the night of the murder. Intrigued by this discrepancy, Johnson decided to dig deeper into David Chen's life. He re-interviewed David's colleagues and clients, paying closer attention to the man's movements and relationships. It was during a conversation with David's assistant that Johnson stumbled upon a crucial piece of information. David had been making frequent, unexplained trips to a coffee shop across town, always during his lunch break. Surveillance of the coffee shop revealed a startling discovery. David was meeting regularly with Maria Gonzalez, his neighbor's wife. The two displayed an intimacy that went far beyond friendly neighborly interactions. Johnson had uncovered David's secret affair. With this new information, Johnson approached Maria for another interview. Confronted with evidence of the affair, Maria broke down, revealing the extent of her relationship with David. They had been involved for over a year, stealing moments together whenever they could. Maria, racked with guilt, admitted that she had lied in her previous statement to protect David. The affair cast David's alibi for the night of the murder in a new light. Maria confirmed that they had indeed met that evening, contradicting David's claim of working late. This revelation shattered the carefully constructed timeline David had provided. As Johnson delved further into the relationship between David and Maria, he uncovered a web of lies and secret rendezvous. Bank records showed David had recently inquired about transferring large sums of money offshore. Email exchanges hinted at plans for a new life together, away from their spouses and responsibilities. The detective now faced a troubling question. Could David Chen, the grieving stepfather, actually be Emily's killer? The motive was unclear, but the cracks in David's perfect facade were beginning to show. Johnson realized he had been so focused on Laura that he had nearly missed the real story unfolding right before his eyes. The pivotal moment in the investigation came from an unexpected source. Emily's best friend, Sarah Thompson, approached Detective Johnson with a small, leather-bound book, Emily's personal diary. Sarah, racked with guilt, admitted she had initially withheld the diary, fearing it might tarnish Emily's memory. But as suspicion fell on Laura, Sarah realized the truth was more important than protecting her friend's secrets. Johnson spent a sleepless night poring over Emily's private thoughts. The diary painted a vivid picture of a young woman grappling with a terrible discovery. In entries dating back several months, Emily wrote of her growing suspicion that her stepfather was having an affair. She described catching glimpses of furtive text messages, overhearing hushed phone calls, and noticing David's increasingly erratic behavior. The most damning entry came just 3 days before Emily's murder. In shaky handwriting, she recounted following David one evening and witnessing him in an intimate embrace with Maria Gonzalez. Emily wrote of her disgust and betrayal, expressing uncertainty about whether to confront David or tell her mother. This revelation provided the missing piece of the puzzle. Emily had discovered David's affair, presenting a clear motive for murder. David, a man who had built his life on carefully maintaining appearances, faced the threat of losing everything: his marriage, his reputation, and his financial stability. Armed with this new information, Johnson revisited the forensic evidence. He ordered a more thorough examination of Emily's clothing, specifically searching for trace evidence that might have been overlooked. The results were telling. Fibers found on Emily's jacket matched those from a rare wool blend used in David's expensive suits. Furthermore, a re-examination of Emily's phone records showed a series of calls to David's office number on the day of her disappearance. The calls had been brief, suggesting Emily might have been trying to confront her stepfather or arrange a meeting. Johnson also discovered that David had purchased a hunting knife from a local sporting goods store just a week before the murder. The knife, conspicuously missing from the Chen home, matched the type of weapon believed to have been used in the crime. As the pieces fell into place, Johnson realized the extent of David's deception. He had not only manipulated his family and community, but had also skillfully misdirected the entire investigation towards Laura. The detective felt a mix of admiration for David's cunning and disgust at his cold-blooded actions. With mounting evidence pointing to David Chen as the killer, Johnson knew he needed to move quickly. The man who had once been viewed as a pillar of the community was now revealed to be a calculating murderer willing to sacrifice his stepdaughter to protect his secrets. Detective Johnson decided to confront David Chen at his office, away from the prying eyes of neighbors and the media that had been camped outside the Chen home. As Johnson and his partner entered the plush confines of David's financial advisory firm, they found him in the middle of a client meeting, the picture of professional composure. In a voice barely above a whisper, David began to talk. He spoke of Emily confronting him in the woods, threatening to expose his affair to Laura and Maria's husband. He described the panic that overtook him, the fear of losing everything he had worked for. With tears streaming down his face, David recounted how he had lashed out in desperation, silencing Emily permanently. The confession poured out of him, a torrent of guilt and self-loathing. David described how he had meticulously planned to frame Laura, playing on the known tensions between stepmother and stepdaughter. As Johnson placed him under arrest, David's only words were a broken plea. "Don't tell Maria. Please don't let her know what I've done." The once proud man was led out of his office in handcuffs, his world collapsing around him as the truth of his actions finally came to light. After a 2-week trial and mere hours of deliberation, The jury returned with a guilty verdict on all counts, including first-degree murder. The judge, citing the brutal nature of the crime and David's calculated attempts to deceive investigators, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice had been served, but for those whose lives had been shattered by David's actions, the wounds would take far longer to heal. In the end, the case of David Chen stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the enduring power of a young woman's voice, even when silenced, to ultimately reveal the truth.